Trump leaned forward, eyes narrowed, his voice sharp enough to cut through the air. "Be quiet," he snapped, the words carrying not just across the stage, but across the nation. In that instant, the oxygen seemed to drain from the room. Every camera lens zoomed closer, every microphone crackled to catch the silence that followed. The insult hung there like a thunderclap, echoing longer than the words themselves. The audience froze. Some gasped, some shifted uncomfortably, while others leaned in, sensing that history had just bent in their direction. This wasn't a heckler at a rally. This wasn't a partisan jab on cable news. This was the former president of the United States, a man who had once carried the weight of the free world, being told to sit down like a schoolboy. It was disrespect, naked and unfiltered, aimed not just at Barack Obama, but at the dignity of the office he once held. And yet Obama didn't move. His face remained calm, unreadable, a silence deeper than the insult itself. The question wasn't whether he would respond. The question was how and when. But no one expected the calm, devastating reply that would flip the entire room upside down. What unfolded on that stage was more than a clash of personalities. It was the collision of two political worlds, two visions of what leadership means in America. Trump, brash and unfiltered, had built his brand on volume. His power came from interruption, from drowning out his opponents, from making humiliation look like dominance. Every insult was a performance, every command designed to remind his audience that he was in control. Obama was the opposite. His weapon was restraint. Where Trump roared, Obama measured. Where Trump sought chaos, Obama created calm. He had risen to the highest office in the land not by being the loudest voice in the room, but by being the one whose words carried weight long after. The applause faded. That's why this moment mattered. Because America wasn't just watching a petty exchange, it was watching its reflection. Which version of leadership would define the future? The shouting strong man who demanded silence, or the steady hand who had once carried the nation through storms? The cameras didn't just capture a debate, they captured a battle for America's identity, and the clash was only beginning to heat up. For Donald Trump, silencing opponents was never an accident. It was his signature move, the weapon he drew before any real debate could begin. On debate stages, he cut off rivals mid-sentence, talking over them until their voices disappeared under the weight of his interruptions. Reporters learned quickly that a simple question could be met with a sneer, a nickname, or a shouted dismissal. To Trump, dominance wasn't about persuasion. It was about control, about reminding everyone that he held the microphone. He called opponents weak, branded them with mocking nicknames, and even mocked allies when they dared step out of line. He believed that humiliation proved strength, that if others looked small, he would stand tall. But beneath that volume, cracks always showed. The man who claimed unshakable confidence bristled at criticism. The self-proclaimed strongman erupted at late-night comedy jokes, lashed out at journalists, and could never resist proving his power through insult rather than patience. This was Trump's paradox. The louder he shouted, the clearer his insecurity became. Every "be quiet," every interruption, was less about silencing others and more about silencing the doubt inside himself. For Trump, telling someone to be quiet wasn't new, but saying it to Barack Obama, that was a gamble he didn't understand, because Obama had built his entire career on proving doubters wrong. Barack Obama's story was never one of privilege. Raised by a single mother, moving between continents, he grew up navigating questions of identity, belonging, and worth. He wasn't born into power. He earned every step by carrying the weight of being an outsider who had to prove himself again and again. Every word he spoke was measured, sharpened by the knowledge that a single misstep could confirm the doubts of those who said he didn't belong. That journey forged his greatest strength, grace under fire. From the earliest days of his career, hecklers tried to rattle him, critics tried to corner him, and opponents tried to diminish him. Yet time and again, Obama leaned not on anger but on composure. He was the candidate who smiled at taunts, the senator who listened longer than he spoke, the president who answered insults with wit that cut sharper than rage ever could. Even at the height of pressure, he found ways to humanize the moment. A quick joke, a flash of humility, a refusal to let hostility steal his dignity. In the face of those who shouted the loudest, his calm became the most powerful voice in the room. That is why Trump's command to be quiet carried such irony. Obama had been told to sit down, to wait his turn, to step aside his entire life. And every time he responded not with fury but with precision, turning dismissals into milestones, insults into applause lines, doubt into history. And so when Trump tried to silence him, Obama didn't flinch. He prepared to do what he had always done, turn insults into history. Trump wasn't finished. The first command, be quiet, had landed like a slap. But now he pressed harder, his hands slicing through the air, his voice rising with every sentence. He jabbed a finger toward Obama, repeating the demand, louder this time, his words tumbling over one another in a desperate push to control the stage. The audience shifted uneasily, a ripple of murmurs spreading across the hall. Commentators leaned toward each other, whispering, their pens scratching furiously across notepads. But Obama didn't move. He didn't raise a hand, didn't shake. His head didn't let a flicker of irritation show. He simply sat, his silence cutting through the noise like a blade sharper than any insult. The contrast became impossible to ignore. Trump's volume filled the room, yet somehow it was Obama's quiet that demanded attention. And in that silence, the audience began to lean his way. Every second of composure felt heavier, more deliberate, as if Obama's restraint itself was a reply, one that hadn't even been spoken yet. The louder Trump grew, the more the room leaned toward Obama, waiting, wondering, dreading what would come. And then, Obama leaned forward. Obama let the silence stretch until it felt unbearable. Then, slowly, a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. He leaned toward the microphone, not rushing, not raising his voice, but speaking with a calmness that cut deeper than any shout ever could. If leadership meant telling people to be quiet, he said evenly, you'd be the greatest of all time. He paused, letting the line sink into the air, the audience holding their breath. Then he delivered the strike. But leadership is listening. Leadership is respect. And that's why America turned to me, and not you. The room erupted. Gasps collided with cheers. A wave of laughter rippled through the crowd, and even those who had stayed silent couldn't hide their reactions. The cameras flashed instantly, zeroing in on Trump's face. His expression, once filled with defiance, faltered. The jaw tightened, the eyes flickered, and for the first time that night, he had no words. The reply hadn't been loud. It hadn't been cruel. It had been devastating in its precision. Calm, sharp, unforgettable. The kind of line that replayed in people's heads long after the stage lights dimmed. It was calm. It was sharp, and it cut deeper than any insult could. And yet, this was just the beginning of the shockwaves. Within minutes, the internet was ablaze. Hashtags quoting Obama's line shot to the top of trending lists. Memes flooded every platform. And clips of the exchange were shared millions of times before the debate had even ended. News anchors replayed the moment on loop, dissecting each pause, each expression, each flicker of Trump's stunned silence. Commentators called it the highlight of the night, some even declaring it one of the sharpest comebacks in modern political history. Celebrities chimed in with praise, pundits marveled at the precision, And across the globe, world leaders watched the clip, noting once again the contrast between chaos and composure. In that single moment, the tables turned. Trump's command had become comedy. Obama's reply, a masterclass. But the legacy of that night was bigger than the viral memes. What happened that night was more than a viral moment. It was a lesson, etched in front of millions, about the kind of leadership that endures. This was never simply about a clash of two men. It was about two visions of power, one built on arrogance and noise, the other on dignity and restraint. Trump shouted for silence. Obama answered with composure that spoke louder than any insult. His reply became more than a comeback. It became a symbol. A reminder that listening carries more weight than shouting, that respect disarms insults, that true strength requires no raised voice. The clip traveled far beyond politics, echoing as a universal truth. Calm can shatter. Chaos, dignity can outlast division. In a world where arrogance shouts, dignity whispers, and the whisper always lasts longer. Trump told Obama to be quiet, but his reply, it shocked the world and reminded us what leadership truly looks like. In that instant, the contrast could not have been clearer. Arrogance demanding silence, dignity commanding respect. It wasn't just about one debate. It was about the values that define America at its best. Respect over ridicule, listening over shouting, unity over division. If you believe dignity always wins, share this story. Subscribe to join us in keeping these moments alive and be part of the movement that remembers what true leadership sounds like.